7 p.m. on Thursday means it's time for Fantasy Football Night in America. We're going to kick things off right here on the Better Sports Network with the FFPC Insider Access Show. Hi, hello, and welcome. Remember to follow the Better Network on X at Better Network. I'm your host, Eric Balkman, at Eric Balkman on the X. You know me from the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Award. Pleased to be welcoming in tonight a writer from RotoBaller as well as RotoViz. In fact, I'll be honest with you, this guy's been all over the place as far as all the different companies he's worked for, companies that hired him. And why wouldn't you hire this guy who is a 3-time FSWA nominated writer and a 2-time winner? You follow him on the X at Corbin_Young21. Corbin Young, welcome to Insider Access. Good evening, sir.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on, Eric.
It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. I think one of the things that we had talked about, and we've been texting each other, or DMing each other for a while, but this is a special night because you are chest deep in fantasy baseball stuff right now. And now you get, I think, what's going to be a mental reset for you tonight, where you get to talk about nothing but fantasy football for 2 hours. It kind of gives you a mental break, might sharpen you up for fantasy baseball too. Not that you do need to be any sharper there because you're doing great work.
Yeah, no, definitely. Kind of just 90% of that right now is baseball stuff going on every day. But yeah, trying to sprinkle in a little bit of some football things here and there. But yeah, I think it'd be nice to switch brains for a tiny bit. So
you also, I would say too, you'll notice when we get into the show tonight for everybody else, some of the players we're going to be breaking down, you've already written pieces for the upcoming 2025 season. I know a lot of it on RotoViz, some on RotoBaller as well. So we're going to get your insight on that tonight. It's going to be fun. I want to remind everybody that you can join the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament right now. $1 million grand prize, $50 discount on each third team that you buy. Draft's already running with the live and slow formats. The 7 Bananas promo continues to be live. We've given away 18 free FFPC best ball teams, as well as 2 free FFPC main event teams already. Remember, if you keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row, we're going to keep rewarding you to it. But we will stop once you get the 7 pick 5 times in a row. That's when we give you a jungle safari for 4 or 50 grand, whatever you want. And then that's it. It doesn't matter if you get it 6 times in a row. We're done rewarding you. Clearly, you have been rewarded enough. FFPC main event also going on at myffpc.com, our flagship event. Again, another $1 million grand prize there, $6 million plus prize pool. We've been doing slow drafts and live drafts on the weekend, so you can register for that on Saturday or Sunday, or now for Saturday or Sunday's draft. We got 2 best ball tournaments. One sets you back $125 to enter, but you're eligible for a $300,000 grand prize, $100K runner-up prize in that as well. The other one, just $35 to enter. That's our super flex one, and you'll get $100K if you win that. 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks available for those. Pick up a Dynasty startup team today as well. Entry fees range from $100 all the way up to $5,000, 2,000 plus leagues, and none have ever folded in 15 plus years. Shout out to our producer, the man behind the glass, pushing all the buttons tonight. He is Matt Deutsch, and let's get underway. So the first thing I want to talk about, and by the way, all these blurbs are courtesy of rotoballer.com. Saquon Barkley says he says he feels great physically, right? And I think this is an interesting thing to jump off at because, Corbin, as you remember last year, this dude was going in like the 2nd round of most FFPC drafts. This year, basically top 3 in every single one. 345 carries last year, and that was just in the regular season. Then in the playoffs, he gets 91 more. I mean, we're talking almost 450 rushing attempts this past season. He's 28 years old. He led the league in rushing yards per game and in total rushing yards. Now here's the thing. Everything seems to be the same in Philly. I know that the offensive line may be a little bit different, but for the most part, it's basically the same. Same coordinator, same head coach, and they're defending Super Bowl champs. Here's what has me concerned. He's 28, obviously, as I just mentioned, and we haven't really seen any kind of running back have that kind of volume, Corbin, 1 year, and then come back and have a really, really good season. Not saying he has to duplicate that. That'd be insane. But have a really, really good season the following year. It'd be fine if he was going again in the 2nd round, but he's not. He's a top 3 pick. I have only gotten him on 1 team so far this year, and I feel like I'm okay with that. I've been kind of going away from Barkley, maybe to my own detriment. But if you had the 3rd overall pick or the 4th overall pick, let's say in an FFPC tight end premium league where you're going to have Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Brock Bowers, let's say those are the first 3 picks, and you're sitting at 4, Corbin, how nervous are you about drafting Saquon Barkley in that spot?
I think you're absolutely right with the research, right? And that's basically what I did, right? I like to kind of go to the RotoViz screener here, and I'm looking at all the historical data all back to 2005. And yeah, you're right. Pretty much every single running back, if I'm just sorting by opportunities, basically fell off and scored much fewer fantasy points the following season, right? The only outliers would be LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006, Adrian Peterson in 2009, and Ray Rice in 2011, where they scored more fantasy points in the following season after having this massive kind of opportunity season.
And I think that's like all those guys you mentioned. I mean, they're pretty much, are they all Hall of Famers or will be Hall of Famers? I mean, that's an incredible list, and it's few and far between the players that have been able to do that.
Yeah. So I think, at first glance, I'm like, well, there's a pretty low probability of Saquon Barkley even just matching, right? Or even just like a slight downtick in fantasy scoring based on that. But and this is where I'm probably speaking out of 2 sides of my mouth here. I think this is one of those where it's kind of like a Derrick Henry conversation, right? Where it's like, do we fade this outlier, right? And especially when you have an offense that's, pretty well established and you've got a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, I think it's one of those things where I think I can see why the data would say to fade it, but Barkley is an elite player and he plays on, an elite offense paired with that quarterback, that there's going to be opportunities to score no matter what. So I'd say if you want to buy into the narrative that he might break down, maybe, but I'd say he's probably someone that, if I think about just the offensive environment, I think it's fair to just take that and buy in.
So I normally with a player like this, I'm with you. Like I would be fading him at that price. However, Barkley to me is closer on the Derrick Henry alien outlier scale than a lot of other running backs, right? Had he had less talent, had the situation not be as good, I think that he's an easy fade, but it's not. Like, we have to deal with this guy playing with the defending Super Bowl champs, with everything coming back. And I think because of how elite he is, I'm still not going to take him consistently at that spot. I will vary it up. It's funny because I had the 3 pick in 2 drafts that drafted within 2 days of each other. And in the first one, I took Justin Jefferson there. And in the second one, I took Barkley. So it's one of those things where I will vary it up. I do want to have some Barkley, just not all the Barkley, basically, is what we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Let's move on and talk about Kyren Williams, who apparently is progressing towards an extension with the Los Angeles Rams. This is Gary Klein's reporting for the Los Angeles Times. Apparently that progress has been made. And we'll see what happens, because Williams has been trying to get this done for a while, and why wouldn't he? Blake Corum was drafted on day 2 last year, and then they took Jarquez Hunter this year early on day 3, who they actually traded up for too. That's something to make sure that we understand. Kyren Williams, Corbin, if we look at the ADP on fantasymojo.com, and anytime we cite ADP on this program, it's all due to fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani is the godfather of the Pros versus Joes challenge, and he does a great job putting together a ton of tools that you can utilize to really excel in your FFPC drafts. If you are playing in the FFPC, highly recommend you get a subscription to fantasymojo.com. Kyren Williams is running back 11 at the 304. That's behind Irving, Jacobs, and Taylor. It's ahead of Chase Brown and Breece Hall. Now, in regards to Williams, I was wrong on him last year. I thought Corum would impact the situation, Williams' situation, a little bit more than it did, and Corum was basically non-existent. And then they draft Jarquez Hunter. Now, I don't know how you feel about Jarquez Hunter. I know you did a lot of research on a lot of running backs and stuff prior to the NFL draft. But I'm looking at Kyren Williams right now as we could have the same approach as last year and fade him, and maybe we'd be okay. But is the juice worth the squeeze here when we look at him at the 304? You could start off your team any which way, and Kyren Williams might still be a buy there. The question that we have to answer, and I know it's not a fair one, what's going to happen to Williams this year? Is he just going to have a repeat of 2024, or is the Corum Jarquez Hunter thing going to kind of catch up with him? We know Sean McVay usually likes to go with one running back. And we know he usually doesn't like playing rookies, but I think it's all factors in what we have to decide what we need to do here with Kyren Williams in our drafts.
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing an article about just kind of why Kyren Williams is like a fade, and mostly in Dynasty, I would say, kind of based on what's going on. I wasn't that high on Blake Corum coming in, and anytime I see like real strong kind of film, people being like Blake Corum's really good, I get a little worried because I'm more on that data end. But yeah, I'm much higher on Jarvis Hunter. I think it's tricky. I guess maybe it's kind of just my bias. Like, I'm not a big fan of these kind of Kyren Williams guys. They get the volume, but they're not super excited. Like they just don't have super exciting other things. And so I think those kind of backs are kind of easily replaceable if there's someone that kind of has some explosiveness or shows some receiving and, is able to kind of be a little more, forcing some missed tackles and stuff like Jarvis Hunter might. So, I'd probably be fading at that price, a little worried. If they give him an extension, then, that might kind of say like, hey, the money's investing in him. But again, I think it's just one of those scary kind of profiles that I kind of avoid, but that's just probably a personal kind of drafting style.
Well, and that's fine. And it's all like, listen, drafting is all about personal preference, right? We all have our own risk aversion or no risk aversion, like some people like to draft, which is fine. The fact that Williams is a fade for you, and you weren't that high on Corum coming into his NFL career, are you in on Hunter, or is the entire backfield for the Rams with you this year, Corbin, just a fade, like not a situation you want to be a part of?
No, I think we always want to be a part of the Rams backfield as long as Sean McVay's there, and they kind of just how, like you said, just kind of how they. It's hard to find backfields like this where the touches and opportunities are consolidated into one back pretty heavily. So I think you're going to want a piece of it. And so, I guess it's just kind of also looking at like how we're drafting, and there's some other players there that I'm like, if there's a receiver there, I think I'd probably kind of just that'd be my tiebreaker. But yeah, I think we definitely want a piece of this Rams backfield. I don't think that, I don't think Hunter's price is too bad to be even just kind of, taking a stab later. So,
which makes sense. I mean, and that's totally fine. We are looking for potential league winners at that point in our drafts. You look at, I didn't even look at what Hunter's ADP is right now. Jarvis Hunter is running back 52 in the 13th round. That's when you're swinging for home runs. And Hunter could be a home run. He could very well be a strikeout this year too. As long as we're talking to a baseball guy tonight, through and through. Let's bring up some baseball references. Let's try to hit a grand slam. I guess this would be a triple since our third one is our third piece of news is on deck here. TreVeyon, on deck is another one. TreVeyon Henderson. It's unclear, Corbin, whether he is going to be a bell cow back. Now, this was interesting. Interesting piece that I found, obviously through RotoBaller. But I looked at what Chad Graff said on The Athletic. Now, he is skeptical whether the Patriots have found a bell cow guy in TreVeyon Henderson or whether he's just going to be a third down back. But the quotes in here were really, it was bizarre. Like, it was almost like comparing like, well, we don't know if he's going to be a 3-down guy. He might have the potential to be a third down receiving back. And I'm like, this is a second-round pick. Of course he's got the potential. There's no good about that. He does have the potential to be that. I think he has the potential to be much more. Now, he's had a checkered injury history. Broke his foot when he was a sophomore at Ohio State, had to have surgery on it. Then there was an undisclosed injury his junior year. We don't know what that was. Not the biggest guy, 5'10", 202, but he's fast. And he makes big plays. And that's something that the Patriots have been starving for out of that backfield. If you look at the competition there in New England for him, obviously the big one is Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson was losing touches to Antonio Gibson towards the end of last season. And the Patriots made sure that they utilized one of the first few picks of the second round of the NFL draft. This guy was almost a first-round pick. They got in on TreVeyon Henderson there. I, for the most part, have been pretty bullish on drafting him as my number 3 back in several leagues so far, Corbin. He's going as running back 20. at the 504 in FFPC leagues. So FFPC drafters are selecting him as a top 24 back, which would make him an RB2 in the format. How high are you on TreVeyon Henderson, knowing what we know about him from his college career in Ohio State and knowing what we know about this new offense, this new regime in New England with Mike Vrabel taking over as well?
Yeah, I think the Patriots are going to want to deploy 2 running backs. Ramondre Stevenson had some decent volume, but the offense was so inefficient, so he was pretty awful. And they don't really have a ton of other weapons. I think Henderson kind of could be like I wouldn't be totally too scared, I guess, because I think Henderson could give us kind of like maybe prime or Lions DeAndre Swift type stuff where they're going to have another kind of grinder type back, but there's going to be enough explosive plays, enough, chipping in the receiving game. I mean, there was a point in time where some of us loved Antonio Gibson and kind of like dynasty and redraft. So, I mean, like, I don't know how washed Gibson is at this point, but, I think if it's just like a healthier, younger version of what we wanted Gibson to be, like, and Henderson should be better than that. So, I think it's okay in our realm, especially if it's like PPR's format, where it's okay if he's not like a bell call back, as long as we're getting enough receiving work and it's not completely like 20% snap share type stuff where it's barely even on the field. So
I remember when you were talking about people who used to be high on Gibson, it was I heard a lot of people before he was drafted talking about this is the next McCaffrey. The next McCaffrey. I mean, my God, talk about killing a guy's career before it even starts by comparing him to CMC. But that never happened, obviously. And much like the next great closer has been overhyped in fantasy baseball, like in bullpens or whatever, the next great running back has been overhyped in the NFL as well. Let's move on and talk about the Giants here. Mike Kafka is going to be calling plays again for New York this year. This is good to know because, quite frankly, the best years that Brian Daboll has had, or the best year that Brian Daboll has had as the head coach of the Giants was when Kafka was calling plays and not Daboll. I don't know what your take is on this. Maybe it's a minimal impact that you think. I don't know. But what your take is on how this affects Malik Nabers, how it affects the running backs and Tracy and Scatterbo. I think we're going to talk about all 3 of those guys later on. Russell Wilson, obviously, and then eventually you would think Jackson Dart, Theo Johnson, who I'm really starting to like in redraft leagues as well as dynasty. But Corbin, knowing that Kafka's calling plays, is this at all a needle mover for you in regards to the Giants skill guys?
I think when I looked back at that, you're right. In 2022, Saquon, Barkley, and Daniel Jones are playing, relatively well. The most notable thing I think that stood out from that kind of peak season with Kafka as the OC for the Giants is that Daniel Jones had the most rush attempts, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns in his career when Kafka was in his first season as the offensive coordinator. So maybe we get a bunch more design kind of QB runs for, like you said, maybe Jackson Dart. At one point Russell Wilson had a little bit of some rushing juice, so maybe there's a little bit of some of that. So that might be something to, I think, watch for if we get a little bit of that. And then that might impact some of the, kind of receiving or targets towards their running backs and things like that. But I mean, they have an elite player like Malik Nabers. So, I mean, it would be foolish for them to go away from feeding him, again. But yeah, I think the most thing that stood out was just kind of the, quarterback kind of design, kind of rush attempts and stuff like that under Kafka, and see if those kind of translate if Dart ends up starting.
Yeah, I don't think Russell Wilson's turning back the clock as far as rushing the football anytime soon, but I think you're right. I think it makes Jackson Dart a little bit more interesting in best ball leagues for sure. And then definitely in Superflex best ball leagues, like the FFPC Superflex best ball tournament too. Like, you really got to plant your flag on how you feel about Jackson Dart as a number 3 quarterback, or conversely, Russell Wilson or somebody like that too. Like, you got to figure it out. Now, I personally like to not have to worry about that quarterback situation. Hopefully I have 3 quarterbacks locked up at that time, but you never know. And sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. Travis Kelce is notably skinnier this year. He is thinner. John Terry, longtime FFPC player, said on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on Monday night's broadcast, he said, Kelce has stopped eating. Taylor Swift will not let him eat anymore. Whether that's true or not, that's not for me to judge. But I can tell you that he is going to be reporting to mandatory minicamp. I believe he did report, excuse me. And then Andy Reid was asked about, hey, what's his role going to be this year? And I don't know if the reporter specifically set it up like this, but you have Rashee Rice, who looks like is not going to be suspended. You have Xavier Worthy, who I thought was just going to be a 9-route, speed merchant, and he showed that he was much more than that at the end of his rookie year last year, which is pretty compelling stuff. And then you want to keep Kelce healthy for the playoffs, so on and so forth. So he was asked, are you going to maybe make sure that Kelce is taking some time off and making sure that he's healthy come December and January? And Andy Reid said that he is he doesn't plan on limiting the snaps at all. Quote from Reid, I'm not feeling that. It would be similar to last year, I would imagine, as it goes. So he's in great shape right now. I think he's looking forward to getting going. Reid says he will monitor him through training camp and obviously the regular season. He'll make changes if he needs to. He had the 3rd highest snap count and the 4th most routes of his career in 2024, which is wild, Corbin, because everybody was talking about what a down year Kelce had, and yet he was out there a ton, and he ran a ton of routes. 10-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro. We say he had a down year last year, and by his standards he did, but he still had 97 catches, still had 800-plus yards, got in the end zone 3 times. Yeah, he's not the number 1 tight end anymore. But has the hate gone too far on Travis Kelce? Can we start banking on Travis Kelce coming through for us in fantasy this year? Because now we're only paying tight end 6 price on him. Now in FFPC tight end premium leagues, you can get him in the 6th round. Where was he going last year? 1st, 2nd? Now you can get him in the 6th. How do you feel about the discount on Kelce in 2025?
One of my personal hobbies is working out and lifting weights. So, I'm a sucker for any of these slimming down, best shape of your life. Say whatever you want to say about it, right? And again, sometimes this goes wrong, and I'm not saying we have to buy into every single scenario, but when we've got a elite player or we've got a player that maybe is trying to make some changes right within our control, and one of them happens to be slimming down or best shape, whatever that happens to be, right? I'm going to trust that this is kind of a player with just some elite work ethic, right? So, and if we're translating that to fantasy, the offensive environment for the Chiefs was pretty awful without Rashee Rice, and so Isaiah Pacheco going down, you're relying on Kareem Hunt. It's like the situation got pretty brutal pretty quick. So I think if we've got Rice in there, Worthy taking another step forward, right? They drafted I think it's one of the rookies. I think it's
Jalen Royals.
Yeah.
Jalen Royals.
So those kind of things, and then we've got a healthier Pacheco. I don't see why we shouldn't buy into some discount price for Kelce. Now if it was the other way, right? Now if we weren't really having any discount, then we'd be like, I don't know. Can he hold on? Can he take on this load of career best and everything again? Maybe not, right? Or just kind of, but I think if we're looking at a discounted price, probably trying to get in better shape as he gets a little older, as some of us might try to do, is we're like, oh no, we got a year older, we're gonna do some things. So I'd like to think that it's a good bet there.
You think the weight loss is actually good for him, even playing tight end in football?
Here's the thing with weight, right? We get caught up with it in the other way, like Devontae Chain, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, he's too small. Oh, there's this cutoff, but weight isn't like it fluctuates. I guess what I'm getting at, right? So yes, he could be slimming down right now, but we get to closer to training camp and all those things, he might be bulking back up a little bit or whatever it is, right? And just kind of get back into the playing shape. So I don't know. I'm probably speaking on both sides. I'm reacting and overreacting, but then I'm like, but it's probably a good thing.
but Corbin, that's what FFPC players, they've been doing the exact same thing as you, because we saw this guy being just falling quite a bit after the season ended. I mean, we had drafts going on in January and February, and he was going super late. Then we see him rebound a little bit. And now with, reported skinny hashtag skinny Kelce, now he's fallen a little bit again. So it's like we don't even know what to think. And quite frankly, you're right. Like once we get to training camp, we're going to see if he's still, Pelotoning or if he's hitting the Budweisers and the Kansas City barbecue, right? And we'll find out what he looks like then. But right now, I'm with you. I think early 6th round in tight end premium leagues, that is a bet worth making. When those top 5 are gone, Kelce, it could be much more than a consolation prize this year. Deebo Samuel has moved on from San Francisco. He is now a Commander. And Dan Quinn went out of his way to say that Deebo Samuel still has plenty of speed. We've seen the fat Deebo video, which was not great, but it is what it is. He had his best season in 2021. And since then, he has not touched 1,700 total yards. He has not touched 14 touchdowns, which is what he did 4 years ago. In fact, he's averaged less than 14 games played, just under 750 receiving yards, just under 200 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns, which is fine. But based on where we were drafting him, it was not fine. A lot of people were disappointed with what they got from Deebo Samuel. So you listen to Dan Quinn say, quote, somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten until he was out here how fast he is. I can remember one time he just ran by somebody down the field on a deep ball. And I was like, yeah, I forgot about that. So it didn't surprise me. He also, end quote, he also said Samuel is one of the fastest players on the roster. So when we look at Deebo Samuel in drafts right now, I think this could go a lot of different ways, Corbin. I think he could be rejuvenated by the new spot, the new location, the new offense, Jaden Daniels throwing him the ball, who could be the league MVP this year, or he could continue his injured ways. He could continue not to perform to the level that we expect him to, like he has the last 3 years. I am more likely to say the former. And I look at his price tag, he's wide receiver 40. He's going at that 7-8 turn. This is Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall, Stephon Diggs territory. And I look at it then, I'm like, you know what? It might not be the worst idea in the world to have some Samuel shares at that price right now. Quite frankly, I don't know what to think of him at this moment in time, because he's one of the more, wide range of outcomes players that we have in fantasy this year. How do you feel about Samuel in Washington now?
Well, I think the basically the offensive environment is probably, maybe a slight downgrade, but the quarterbacks, is a slight upgrade or a lateral remove. I mean, you look at 2 quarterbacks that are pretty accurate. They're going to give you some on-target catchable passes. And so I think Washington's been looking for someone, at least last year in, the rookie year for Jaden Daniels, to kind of have another weapon. I mean, when you're rolling out Zach Ertz and Noah Brown and De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus behind Terry McLaurin, it's looking pretty rough. I mean, I did a lot. I did some of the wide receiver cornerback articles for RotoBaller, and it was like every week I'd look at, anybody besides Terry McLaurin, and it was just cycling through, and you're just like, I don't know how we get excited. I mean, there's one week I think I was like, oh, Noah Brown, but then it's just, I think they're going to need someone that's going to, command a little bit more attention. I think I heard somewhere or somebody say like, oh, maybe, this is what Cliff Kingsbury wants. He wants someone to kind of be a little more horizontal, but I don't know if that is kind of how Jaden Daniels and that offense is going to succeed. I think he's more just like I don't think it would serve them well to be going a little more horizontal and not kind of going, down the field, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm with you where if we're looking at kind of where he's priced and just kind of the things that he's done, and we know he's just this yards after catch monster that, like, assuming he's healthy, I don't know why we wouldn't be, taking him at his cost at this time.
I want to talk with you about Stephon Diggs later on in the program, but he's a guy I would definitely be taking ahead of Deebo Samuel there. And I've gone back and forth on the whole Pearsall, Juwan Jennings thing, which I don't know if we'll have time. If there's time, we'll get to that later and find out where you stand on that, because that's one of the most fun conversations in fantasy football right now with Brandon Ayuk recovering. Are you a team Jennings or team Pearsall? I have allegiances to both, so I fluctuate back and forth on them. If there's time, I want to get to that. I want to move on to talk about Tyjae Spears here. Tyjae Spears, the one running back in the NFL who is in zero danger of ever tearing his ACL because he has no ACLs, which is a fantastic selling point for you when you are meeting with NFL teams. Like, coach, I'll never miss the rest of the season with an ACL tear. I've torn them and they're gone. Apparently, he's been really good in the offseason. Jim Wyatt, who covers the Tennessee Titans, said, quote, Spears looked explosive on the field this offseason when he got plenty of work. While Tony Pollard got the bulk of the work last fall, Spears showed flashes at different times. If he can stay healthy, he seems poised to be a consistent playmaker in 2025, end quote. I love that he used the word playmaker. This is a guy who was a third-round pick a couple of years ago, missed 5 games last year, 84 carries, 300 yards, and 4 touchdowns with also tallying 30 catches for over 200 yards. He got 1 receiving touchdown there as well. Brian Callahan, when he was asked about this by the press, about how he's going to deploy his backfield touches, he sort of, without saying it, he's kind of danced around it. But I think, like, if you read between the lines, it seems like he does not want to have like a bell cow there. I think he wants to split it between Pollard and Spears, and who's ever, playing well. The dreaded hot hand theorem here is probably going to be applying in Tennessee. Cam Ward is there. The offense is a little bit different. Obviously, Calvin Ridley's coming back, but they have Alec Iamaner. Chigakonkwo is still there. They've added Shamir DK as well. The thing is with Spears, the fact of where he's, and this is what it always comes down to, is ADP. The fact that Spears right now, you can have him in the 11th round at running back 43. I don't know why. I haven't done it a whole lot. But, man, I just think about if Pollard were to go down, and the opportunity cost of drafting Pollard is something I really don't want to do in a hot hand approach in Tennessee. Think about drafting Tyjae Spears in the 11th round. I feel like I should have more of him. I don't think he's going to set the world on fire. But if Pollard were to miss time, this could be a Spears backfield. And sometimes that window is just enough to help your advance rates in the FFPC best ball tournament, or get you a win in the main event or the big grill or whatever to keep you going. Spears at running back 43 in the 11th round. It's not like I'm not drooling over it, but I feel like I'm a little bit light on Spears this year. Corbin, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think he had a roller coaster, right? There was like Derrick Henry's gone, everybody's like Tyjae Spears is going to be a monster, and then Tony Pollard comes around, and then Tony Pollard takes over kind of most of the touches, and so then the kind of targets and the receiving kind of opportunities for Spears, which was something we were kind of latching onto in year one, kind of fell off. So I think that's probably the most concerning thing. And like you're saying, it's basically the same backfield as it was last year, right? And I don't think, Spears is going to be someone that's going to, take like 25 touches or opportunities a game. It's just going to be there's going to be someone else mixed in. I think in theory, if he can if we can get kind of that kind of elite target share that he used to have, but if it's just a little bit of carries and a little bit, it's going to be just a stash guy, I think, like you're saying, and not someone that's probably going to even contribute on a regular basis. I mean, maybe there's a few more targets here and there, but like you're saying, this offense could evolve a tiny bit with a, upgrade at quarterback and all those things. So it could be something where if we're projecting Cam Ward to be as good as he is, and this offense takes a step forward, then you've got something in this offense that's underpriced. But yeah, I'm probably taking the discounted a little later, like you're saying, but it's going to be someone that a little lukewarm on. I mean, I don't know why 1 year should change that so much, but it did, so.
Normally, it's not a backfield we spend a lot of time talking about with Pollard and Spears because, to your point, the backfield has not changed much from 2024 to 2025. I think what makes it different is the fact that you have the number 1 overall pick running plays for your offense in Cam Ward at quarterback this year. And sometimes a rising tide raises all ships. Now, excuse me, if you don't believe Cam Ward is a special player, which I know many of you don't believe he is, then certainly this could be just a zero impact player in Spears. However, there is a chance there. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yes, I am. 11th round, it makes sense to have some Spears on your rosters this year. The guy that went immediately after Cam Ward in the draft was Travis Hunter, Corbin. He goes to Jacksonville, and his head coach, Liam Cohen, has said that he actually might be a little bit more comfortable on defense. This is after we found out that Travis Hunter who's going to be playing more offense than defense this year. I'm going to read the quote from Liam Cohen. This is not an offense specifically that you just go out, line up, and play. Our understanding that Travis is most naturally comfortable, most naturally in tune on the defensive side of the ball, we wanted to load him up offensively throughout this window to ensure that by the time we got to training camp, we had a runway built up on that side because there's so much more nuance, end quote. The Jaguars said they're going to play him on offense and defense. We know how talented he is. I saw many dynasty pundits out there telling me that Hunter was the best wide receiver in this class, ahead of Matthew Golden, ahead of Tedero McMillan. And the fact that he wasn't like the consensus was simply because we didn't know what was going to happen with him with corner and wide receiver. Now, since this news came out after the draft that the Jaguars planning on using him more on offense than defense, he's moved up significantly, as you might expect. He's going at the end of the 5th round, wide receiver 26, nestled in firmly with a glut of receivers there, including Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Jamison Williams, and Zay Flowers. Travis Hunter, probably no surprise. Maybe this is non-news here that he's still more comfortable on defense. But when the real bullets start flying, for lack of a better term here in September, Corbin, he's playing opposite Brian Thomas. Is this a guy that you want to be in business with at the 5'10"? Or are you a little bit nervous about how we really don't have a precedent for a two-way player of this ilk that we've ever drafted in fantasy before?
Yeah, I mean, I can't go without throwing in a Shohei Ohtani reference because this feels like the maybe slightly or the football version of Shohei Ohtani. But I mean, here's the hard part, right? I guess I think about from a realistic standpoint, how many snaps per game he could be playing. And if we're playing on both sides, it's essentially like, Ohtani hitting and pitching, like just the stress of both sides and the mental load and the physical stress of playing as many snaps as he does, is definitely kind of interesting. And then you said, so we have the report about like him, more comfortable on defense. And then like you're saying, it's like he was focusing more on offense. And it's just like, I mean, I think he's probably got the work ethic where wherever it's going to happen, we're going to have some success. So I kind of lean into that just because to be able to do this and play at a relatively high level is something noteworthy, I think. I mean, I maybe this is just a total cop out, but I kind of want to see it happen. I kind of want to see him succeed on both sides. I don't have a vision for how that works out. I mean, I think for fantasy, we would hate for it to be like a more of like a target per route kind of guy where it's like he's only, I don't say Marvin Mims like, but like where it's like gadgety like. I mean, I don't think we want that because it's going to be very frustrating. But I don't know if he's going to command like, playing with Brian Thomas, there's got to be targets available around. So I think we're going to get, I guess if you're thinking just like weekly, you're going to want at least 7-8 targets from him to have some, some sustainability, especially at that price. But if we're not getting that, then, I mean, I don't know what value on defense, for fantasy wise, like,
I think there's a couple of red flags. Oh, not red flags, but there's a couple of things not working in Hunter's direction on this. Number one, Liam Cohen already talked about how difficult this offense is to learn, where you can't just pop in and know what you're doing. Number two, he had the opportunity, and I think I'm getting this right, but don't quote me on this. He had the opportunity to talk about the drain, which you alluded to, of what it's like playing, pitching and hitting, playing offense and defense. And he went out of his way to say that Travis Hunter has the physicality to do it. Like he doesn't get tired. He didn't say anything about the mental aspect. Now, I don't know if like that means he wasn't asked about it or he is concerned that maybe mentally this guy is not ready to play both ways in the NFL his rookie year. And oh, by the way, should we be surprised if he's not? I mean, think about all these rookies that just crush college and then they come into the NFL and it takes a while. And that's for just playing one side of the ball. They're going to try to play this guy on two sides of the ball. Another thing that's working against them, target hog Brian Thomas. God, he was unbelievable last year. That's the number one receiver on this team. And if he fails, right? If he fails, De'Ami Brown's been looking really, really good so far. You can't tell me that De'Ami Brown couldn't step in a pinch if they want to ease Hunter's mental drain and just have him play more on defense. I'm not saying that's likely to happen. I'm saying it could happen. And when you're talking about stuff like that, all these things, wouldn't you be better off spending your late 5th round pick on one of those other guys I mentioned? Cortland Sutton, who we've seen do it before. Devonta Smith, who we've seen do it before. Zay Flowers, who's done it before. I don't know. I feel like at that point in the draft, there's probably that's not a risk worth taking for me with all those other guys there. And it sounds like you're of the same way. There's no shame in it, Corbin, by saying like, I want to see it first. Why wouldn't you want to see it first? Because we don't have any kind of precedent for this. So when we see it first, it will be the first time that anybody is seeing it with Travis Hunter. Marquise Brown, let's move on and talk about him. From the young to the slightly not so young anymore. Marquise Brown says he feels 100% healthy coming into the 2025 season. He missed a ton of time last year. Bad shoulder injury in the preseason last year, and did not play until week 16 against the Houston Texans. In 4 of the 5 games he played, he did get at least 5 targets in those, and I'm including the postseason here. However, the caveat, there's no Rashee Rice out there. So how is this going to be when Rice is healthy? Kelce has come back. Worthy is going to be taking, you would think, a sophomore step forward here. I don't want to say he's free, but you're talking about a guy that is wide receiver 59 right now. I mean, you could get him in the 13th round. Are we better off? And I kind of been fading both Kansas City receivers. If anybody, I'm drafting Rice. But it's not like I've been targeting both of them. But I think about the FFPC best ball tournament. For people drafting in that, getting him in like the 13th round, 14th round. I mean, I think that might make some sense if you want. Maybe you already have Mahomes on your team. Maybe you have Mahomes and Kelce, and you want to add another stack onto that. I think your draft capital is maybe a little bit better spent with Hollywood Brown rather than Rice or Worthy. Or maybe I'm just talking out of my rear end. Give me your thoughts, Corbin.
Yeah, I think it's just the when healthy part, right? But when healthy, he's basically like we're talking about expected fantasy points per game. It's basically like a wide receiver 2, but a wide receiver 3 at worst. And we're talking about playing in, with one of the better quarterbacks. And like you're saying, I think there's a potential bounce back for this passing offense or this offense in general if there's not all those injuries and issues just in terms of not having enough weapons and not having things kind of jive, but so yeah, I think it's worth a kind of late round stash, but it's one of those things where I don't know if I want to stash a receiver that we're dreaming upon, because like we're talking about, we might also want to, maybe we just go to the route of taking the rookie they drafted kind of thing, right? That kind of thing where maybe there's more value in kind of doing that, but and I think Rose is going even later, so like I think I could envision a little more upside, and then if we think about the scenario of like everybody's healthy and it's going well, and Rashee Rice and Worthy and Kelce are doing well, maybe Brown's like, I don't say meaningless, but yeah.
Well, no, he would be.
Yeah,
I think he would be in that case, unless you're talking best ball. Then I think there's still something there. But yeah, I mean, like Rich on YouTube is talking about this right now. That he's a roster clogger in redraft. Yeah. And like I don't like saying redraft because best ball is still redraft. I always say best ball and then managed leagues. But yeah, in managed leagues, like I think like okay. You're always looking for the injury away type guys. Normally that's reserved for running backs, but I think there are certain receivers that would represent an injury away type guy. Maybe Brown, but you think about that passing offense last year, and I don't know what's going to happen with it this year. But Corbin, we all saw the graphic throughout the season when we're watching. The Chiefs didn't score 30 points, I think, until like the second to last game of the season. This was not an elite offense last year. Now, maybe they will be this year, when they get Rice back and another big time weapon on the perimeter. I don't know. But I just think that with Hollywood, you want to take him in best ball. I'm on board with that. I think your late round managed leagues picks are better spent elsewhere. Okay. Where do I want to go to next? Oh, Jalen Coker, everybody's favorite player last year. Jalen Coker, Everybody who hated Xavier Legette automatically had to like Jalen Coker last year, Corbin, and everybody who loved Jalen Coker had to hate Xavier Legette. There was no Venn diagram where those two ever intersected. And I was kind of surprised when I saw this. But apparently, he is not a lock for the 53-man roster in Carolina. Joe Person, who covers the Carolina Panthers for The Athletic, said that he did his roster projection or whatever. And he had Adam Thielen, Tyrone McMillan, and Xavier Legette as the only locks to make the roster. He did say rookie Jimmy Horn is likely to make the team, not necessarily because of his offensive skills, but because he's a pretty talented returner. They only carried 5 receivers to start the 2024 season. So that leaves one spot amongst Jalen Coker, Hunter Renfrow, Dan Chisena, if I'm pronouncing that right, David Moore, and Jacoby George. They're fighting basically for one spot. I think that they would look towards special teams here. I think that what's wild here is not necessarily that Coker might not make the team, but the fact that this guy had such a connection with Bryce Young last year, and now this following year, we're talking about him not making the team. So that's weird to me. And number 2, they're talking about not keeping him around after a really good rookie campaign in lieu of keeping Adam Thielen, the corpse of Adam Thielen, who somehow is still getting it done in the NFL. And I don't believe in him. I don't believe he's going to be a difference maker this year. It's a young man's game, and I'm definitely an ageist, and I'm willing to admit that. So if they're talking about Coker maybe not making the roster and Thielen as one of the locks and Jimmy Horn being one of the guys that's likely to make the team, to me this suggests that Tyrone McMillan is in for a big season, and Xavier Legette is probably being underdrafted in FFPC leagues right now. And I'll tell you, in the Big Gorilla over the last 3 days in drafts there, he's not even being drafted. Like, nobody's even taking him. No, I beg your pardon. 16th round, wide receiver 70. So he's basically free. The Carolina receivers, this Coker thing throws a monkey wrench into it. But if I read between the lines, I feel like Legette and I feel like McMillan are the guys to own this year for a resurgent Bryce Young, who really came on at the end of 2024.
Yeah, I was gonna write an article for RotoViz about some undrafted receivers, and Coker was obviously going to be a part of that. But after some research, we're basically chasing Coker, if we can even say we're chasing that, and Rashid Shaheed when we're talking about undrafted free agent receivers. Even just research on day 3 receivers. It's just not a good outlook.
Mm-hmm.
Even then we could nitpick and be like, oh, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Puka Nacua, but again, we're chasing something that Coker is not, I think, in my opinion. And I think you're just spot on. I think it's just the way it's kind of shaken out, and we're bringing in a top prospect, and I think Xavier Legette kind of showed us a tiny bit more. And there's some, if we're doing some tiebreakers of athleticism and some tackle breaking, I think Legette's got that over Coker and those kind of things. So, I don't see how I can find a lot of positives for Coker other than it was a cool story as a UDFA in year 1.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. He came on out of nowhere, and it was fun. And now we're on to 2025, which is a new season. And there's a lot of Coker apologists out there that are going to be shrugging if he doesn't make the team, which I still think he does, but he's going to have to play some special teams. And quite frankly, I don't know how much special teams he played last season. I want to go up to Pittsburgh here and talk about Aaron Rodgers. There was an offensive coach that was interviewed about Aaron Rodgers and his acclimation and his fit with the Steelers this year. Quote this is from an anonymous NFL offensive coach. He's still throwing the blank out of the ball. He's the best quarterback they've had since Ben. We will see how the body holds up, but I think he's going to help them immensely. Corbin, I think that a lot of people are under the assumption that Rodgers was an absolute dumpster fire last year because the Jets kind of were a dumpster fire. Dude threw for just under 4,000 yards and just under 30 touchdowns. I think that's fine for a 40-year-old quarterback. He gets DK Metcalf, who, granted, I don't think is as talented as Garrett Wilson. He won't have Devontae Adams, and And, in this Arthur Smith offense, I do see the potential for messiness with how Smith likes to run an offense and how Rodgers likes to run it. It's probably going to be a run-heavy offense. So I like Warren this year quite a bit out of the backfield. When you look at Rodgers, I'm viewing him as nothing more than a third quarterback if I'm drafting 3 quarterbacks in a best ball tournament right now. In the big gorilla right now over the last 3 days, he has moved up to quarterback 16 at the 13-14 turn. I don't know. I feel like I want to shoot higher for my backup quarterback. I'd rather have I beg your pardon. I misspoke. That was one draft that he went as wide receiver 16. So normally he's not even being drafted. I want to go with a higher upside guy. I'm not seeing much of anything here with Rodgers this year. I think he's going to be fine, but I think we have to remember that the offensive talent around him is much less than what he had with the Jets a season ago.
And that's basically what I was going to point out, right? It's like, we were excited about Aaron Rodgers with the Jets even before the Achilles tear, right? And arguably better weapons, younger in their prime, right? Like, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams last year. I have a hard time seeing some optimism, right? With the Steelers, like you're saying, with some arguably worse offensive pieces. The kind of, I guess, narrative or unquantifiable piece is the coaching staff for the Steelers, right? And so it's like there could be some of that where Rodgers might lock in and it might align with some things, but it's hard for me to get excited about Rodgers. I think you're exactly right. He's still pretty good. Like you're saying, at that event, he's still pretty good. All the kind of metrics look pretty similar. So I have a hard time being excited about the Steelers offense, especially with some of the changes. I love DK Metcalf as a Seahawks fan and being in the Pacific Northwest, but some of that is just kind of tricky. I was trying to look at what the Steelers and Jets offense looked like kind of last year. I thought the Jets were, they're relatively pass heavy and kind of neutral game scripts and stuff like that. So, but if I'm sorting that right, yeah, the Steelers were kind of toward the bottom of the league, probably like bottom 7 or 8 in neutral game script pass rate. And the Jets were second in neutral game script pass rate. That's kind of one of those tricky ones where I can't tell you if that was more offensive coordinator or kind of system. The Steelers did run a massive ton of no huddle rate in neutral game scripts. So I don't know. We've got a mixed bag there, but maybe we could see a little more pass heavy stuff, especially in neutral game scripts, assuming, they're a little more run heavy, but I can't see a kind of massive peak season for like DK Metcalf or anything, unless it's more based on touchdowns. So
yeah. And Rich on YouTube is pointing out too, Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers, what could go wrong? And that's sort of my take on it. Like I could totally see not one, but multiple in-season blow up. You also have Aaron Rodgers, who is an absolute tactician and perfectionist when it comes to ball placement and route running. DK Metcalf, I don't want to say he's like laissez-faire out there, but his body just kind of goes where it's going to go. And that's not what Rodgers wants in his offense. Rich wants to know, Corbin, question for you. Is Pittsburgh now going to run this super slow offense that Rodgers is infamous for? Few plays, and then every snap right at the play clock expiration. I live in Northeast Wisconsin, so I saw this for years with Rodgers, where he'd run it down. And it was fine. He orchestrated some really, really talented, high-powered offenses in Green Bay doing that. But at the same time, it's not great for fantasy. And when you consider that Arthur Smith likes to run the ball a lot, and he's got 2 running backs that can do it, in Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren, I almost wonder if this is going to be one of the slowest offenses in the NFL, which would be another reason to fade the Steelers' offense this year.
Yeah. I'd have to do a little more research on that, but I do know what you're talking about. There was a lot of like timeouts being called when this thing's clock's running down. I hope not, but I don't. If I was looking at the Steelers' backfield, like I don't know if they have the guys to grind it out. I mean, maybe Caleb Johnson is kind of our Najee Harris like replacement, but I don't think they have the running backs to really, kind of grind out the clock on the ground, I guess is what I'm getting at, or the talent, that kind of thing. I mean, there's speaking of Arthur Smith, there's Cordero Patterson lingering around deeper on their depth chart. So I'd say in theory they could try it, but I would guess that if they're slowing down the game, it's mostly going to be on the defensive end and maybe not so much on the offensive end, because they're going to need I guess I just feel weird about their weapons, like unless Jalen Warren but yeah.
New York had buku false starts as well last year as well, according to Rich, which, that happens when you run the clock down that far. I also think that Mike Tomlin has been around the block, and say what you will about him, but he knows how to win. And the way you win in that AFC North is keeping Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase off the field. It's keeping Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry off the field. So you have to win with defense. You have to win with a slow, more methodical, deliberate offense. And I think that's what they're going to employ this year. Much to the chagrin of fantasy owners and Steelers fans. I want to get one more final thing, and I know we're overdue for a break, but I do want to ask you about J.J. McCarthy. One of the unknowns in what was a really talented quarterback class last year. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. We didn't see any of McCarthy because he had that knee surgery, and we don't know what to expect this year. He was the 10th overall pick, torn right meniscus, knocked him out for the year. Kevin Seifert, who covers the NFC North for ESPN, said that his arm strength, while this has been kind of a controversial topic in regards to McCarthy, has been fine. Justin Jefferson also backed up McCarthy's arm strength as well, that he says he can zip it wherever he needs to. In camp so far this year, in minicamp, his ball has looked very lively down the middle of the field. And he is varying up his delivery as well when he needs to, based on the route and what's needed to move the chains. He's 22 years old. He is the starting quarterback for the Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings had a chance to acquire Aaron Rodgers if they wanted to. They said, no, we're good with McCarthy. Corbin, the more I draft, the more I see McCarthy being bumped up, and I still don't think he's going where he should be going right now. I think he's still going late. And if you look at the Big Gorilla over the last 3 days, again, this is an FFPC managed league. It's not best ball, managed league. 1505. He's going after Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Cameron Ward, which Cam Ward, I guess that's fine. But I just think about the upside with what he's going to be throwing to this year, the improved offensive line, Minnesota, who won a boatload of games last year. I know it's the toughest division in pro football, or at least second toughest. But I like McCarthy this year, man. I think he's definitely in for a big time season.
Yeah, I think when I look at some of the team level trends, I think any quarterback, especially one that's talented like JJ McCarthy, I think we're going to want to buy into quarterback under Kevin O'Connell, right? I think we saw Sam Darnold revive. I think this system just plays well for quarterbacks in general. I was trying to look, and I think I was right. There's even a massive like Josh Dobbs week, those kind of things. Nick Mullins, insert whatever, but so. I think you're right. He's probably underpriced. Yes. Will there be some kind of growing pains? Yeah, but there's so much talent on this offense. I think the biggest question marks probably on this Viking offense is just their running backs, right? But in terms of the kind of receiving weapons, and if we're assuming that McCarthy is as good as peak Darnold was last year or better, then yeah, we're gonna want to take that discounted price. But
I think with McCarthy too, he is the type of player that will rise up draft boards as we get deeper into drafting season, especially once training camp rolls around and we see these highlights of him connecting with Jefferson and Addison in practice. That's the kind of stuff that gets FFPC players in the mood to select him a round or two earlier than where he was going. And I bet he gets much higher as we get into drafting season, a late drafting season in August. And then when we're drafting live at Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas for the FFPC live events in September. You're going to see him going high. Rich, I have good news for you. Rich on YouTube. If you guys get time, if anyone can make sense of the Denver wide receiver situation, that would be great. Bottom line, I don't trust Peyton at all for coach speak. Lucky for you, Rich, we will be talking about the Denver wide receiver situation, specifically one polarizing receiver on that offense. That's coming up in our next segment. I also want to ask Corbin Young from RotoViz and RotoBaller who he is fading and targeting amongst rookie receivers this year. And hey, let's get into the sophomore guys as well. Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr. Target or fade, that's coming up next. You're watching Insider Access, presented by the FFPC and the Better Sports Network. Corbin Young and me, Eric Balkman, will be back right after this.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm. And boy, do I have great news for you. It's that time of year. The FFPC main event is open. The flagship contest, in my opinion, the biggest number one contest in all of fantasy football. It's not just about the prizes. You can win $1 million, but if you win a contest like this, you are gold-plated, gold-stamped in this community. That puts respect on your name when you go in there with the big dogs and you win a tournament like this. So get set up with my FFPC now. When you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more if you've never drafted there before, and you can get in there with the big dogs. If you really want, you can actually go to Vegas and draft at the Paris Casino live in these contests. You don't have to do that, though. You can draft online. They have 6-hour, 2-hour, and 60-second clocks, depending on what you're feeling. You're going to want to draft early and often in these to give yourself the best possible shot at winning. And let me tell you, when you go over to your social media bio and you throw FFPC main event champion in there, people start thinking about you at a different way. You are now an absolute champion and legend in this community if you win the FFPC main event. Open now over at myffpc.com.
This is the main event draft season.
A main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
Hour number 2 of the Insider Access show presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship gets underway here on the Better Sports Network right now. Being joined tonight by Corbin Young from RotoViz, RotoBaller. Corbin, you have done a ton. You've worked for, my God, like a half dozen, maybe more, a half dozen sites that you've contributed to over the course of your career, right?
Yeah. I have kind of bounced around here and there and just kind of finding, early on, someone told me just trying to find a spot that kind of aligns with, the research I like to do and kind of the values and just some of the resources and support. So, yeah, I think obviously I'm pretty data heavy, so I've kind of been leaning into more of that data heavy stuff. And definitely bounce around, but I've been settling in here for the last year or two. So, yeah.
3-time FSWA finalist, and you won twice. What were the awards you won at the FSWA?
One was the baseball ongoing series, and then last year was for baseball writer of the year. So
good for you. That's fantastic. Good stuff. I'm honored that we could have the baseball writer of the year for the FSWA on this fantasy football podcast tonight. Do you do? I know you do a ton of fantasy football stuff too. Do you do other sports like basketball, hockey, or are you just basically baseball and football?
Yeah, basically baseball and football. I mean, those seasons overlap quite a bit, so it's hard to mix in anything else. And it's more, my own fault, just kind of how I like to do things and the kind of research that I like to do. It wouldn't do any good if I was doing like 10% of something else or whatever. But
right, yeah, and you're grinding, man. You're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. Excited to pick your brain for another hour here tonight on Insider Access. Let's go to New York. We'll go back to New York. We talked about the Mike Kafka calling plays this year. I want to get into a target or fade segment here. We'll kick it off with Malik Nabers. Now, Brian Dable said that there are no concerns with Malik Nabers' toe about him being ready for training camp at the end of next month. He did not participate in OTAs this spring. did not participate in mandatory minicamp because of this toe injury. And this is the part that's hard for me to wrap my brain around. This has bothered him since college, Corbin. The team's not concerned. He should be fine for training camp, the preseason, and obviously the start of the regular season in September. He still, even though he was dealing with this toe problem, still had well over 100 catches, over 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 170 targets. And oh, by the way, he didn't have Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas, or Peyton Manning throwing to him. He had the Drek of the Giants organization, including but not limited to Tommy Cutlets throwing to him last year. It was bad. He does get Russell Wilson. He will probably get Jackson Dart at some point. And maybe Jameis Winston, who, say what you will, Jameis Winston, but that dude puts up numbers, and Malik Nabers would be a direct beneficiary of it. If you look at the ADP for Malik Nabers right now, and the FFPC Big Gorilla, he's a bona fide first-round pick at the 110, wide receiver 4. He's going right before guys like Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas, and Amon-Ra St. Brown at his position. The toe thing, let me know your level of concern with that. Maybe this is more of a thing that I need to be thinking about if it's still a problem later on in his career, not his second year in the league, but it's still in the back of my mind. Malik Nabers at the back end of the first round, Corbin, is that a target for you, or are you fading him at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a target. When you finish the season as wide receiver 1 and expected fantasy points per game, but like you said, he's on one of the most inefficient and brutal offenses. It's hard not to buy in at nearly any price like that, right? Where it's like even it's back in the first round. I mean, sure there could be some concerns with the toe. I mean, I have to dig a little deeper, but I think if it's a little more long term, then I think I'd have a little more concerns. But right now, I'm not having any concerns.
I think that's the way I need to play it too. Understanding that this was a problem for him in college. He played through it last year. He's 21, this is the time where you should be able to play through stuff like that. Now, when he gets to be 27, when he gets to be 28 and the toe thing it's more of a problem for him, then I think we need to be worried about it. But this is his age 22 season. I'm fine with him at the end of the first round. Haven't gotten a lot of back end of the first round picks, but that's a guy I'll definitely be looking at here as a target. I'm with you, Corbin, on this. Let's go to the guy that was drafted in front of him at the wide receiver position in the 2024 NFL draft. And this guy, much more polarizing. Marvin Harrison Jr. Second-year receiver. He has gotten bigger. He's gotten more muscular this offseason, and he's very confident in what the Cardinals can do on offense in 2025. 4th overall pick a season ago, 62 catches, just under 900 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That was 5th in receiving yards for a rookie. Oof, not good. Harrison said he spent a lot of time this offseason with Kyler Murray outside of the Cardinals facility as he's trying to build some chemistry with his quarterback. And I look at Harrison last year as a borderline first-round pick, definitely an early second-round pick for amongst a lot of people. The discount is real this year, my friend. Corbin, he is not going in FFPC Big Gorilla drafts until and I just had it and I lost it. I apologize. Wide receiver 18 at the 310. So this is almost 2 full rounds of discount. And this is the year that most players take a step forward, their sophomore year. I feel like he was not utilized properly. I can't remember. It might have been Joe Dolan from Fantasy Point Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio last week who was saying this. The majority of his targets were along the sideline last year. Very little over the middle. And he made some plays on that and he flashed. But at the same time, it's fine to have an all-world wide receiver. You still need to do some stuff for him too. Like, he can't do it all on his own. I'd like to think Arizona learned that this offseason. And I'd like to think that the triumvirate of Murray, Harrison, and McBride is going to be pretty lethal in that NFC West division. I've been taking Marvin Harrison at the end of the 3rd round, sometimes in the early 4th when he slips there. I am betting on not only a bounce back, but a leap forward for Harrison this year. Are you with me by saying Marvin Harrison is a target for you? Or are you on the opposite side? Are you going to say he's a fade?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. Last year, I talked about how Marvin Harrison Jr. had the highest ADP for a rookie ever, like as far as I could get ADP data for, right? And so he was obviously just priced ridiculously high, which is probably too lofty of an expectation. I think when I was looking, he was going like in the second round when I wrote that article, at least. So it's fallen a little bit. I think so. Where we, I think this is where I'm. I might be just cherry picking, but this is kind of something I lean into a little bit and when I'm looking at some wide receiver data, right? So when we're looking at this average separation score from fantasy points, he ranked 18th against man coverages. So this is kind of better than guys like AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, a little bit behind Puka Nacua, Nico Collins. So I think if they can kind of trust him in some more of those man coverages and just kind of adjust kind of the usage for him a tiny bit with, Trey McBride kind of eating up a bunch of targets too, I think we could see a step forward. I think the biggest question mark is just their passing offense, right? Like is Kyler Murray going to support two guys? Like, and can they have a really good passing offense? I think is kind of the concern, but I think if we're just looking at just Marvin Harrison kind of alone in his skill, I think, yes, there's a bounce back to happen. The price might be still a little high as we're pricing in there, but I think there's a bounce back that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you for sure. Rich, he said, you could read it on, I'm not going to read the full comment, but the serious recency bias that he's done on him. Joe King also pounded in on YouTube saying he's seen enough with Harrison. He is all in on McBride this year. McBride, we didn't talk about him. McBride, I think, is really interesting. What did he have last year? 2 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown, and they weren't till the end of the season. I wonder if he would have had like 6 or 7 touchdowns. Would he be going like back-to-back with Bowers in drafts right now? Right now in tight end premium FFPC leagues, Bowers is the 104, McBride's the 111. And that's with like no touchdowns last year. Like we could make the case that not only is Harrison going to take a step forward, McBride could take another step forward too on that offense by just simply, regressing to the mean with a half dozen, maybe more than a half dozen touchdown catches this year.
Yeah. I mean, McBride is an elite target earner, right? 33.6% first read target share. I mean, that's like elite territory. So, I mean, clearly Kyler Murray loves looking his way. And I think we love that for fantasy purposes. But I guess I just have more concerns about Kyler Murray as a passer, kind of supporting 2 guys than I kind of do just like if these guys are talented, absolutely. So that's where I have a little bit of skepticism, but I think Marvin Harrison is due for a bounce back for sure. And I can't a player this talented isn't going to be okay with, not being good, I guess.
Joe King I can't even believe this. I will because I trust Joe. He said after week 5, McBride was 5th overall in the FFPC. That's among running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. 5th overall. That's crazy. And he only scored 3 touchdowns after week 5 last year. So maybe we are underrating McBride because of the presence of Bowers. I don't know. Or the presence of Harrison. I don't know. Jordan Addison is on a team where he is the second banana to Justin Jefferson. And we found out earlier this week that his trial date has been set for July 15th, roughly a month from now. This is regarding his DUI citation from last season. He pled not guilty in December, but even if he's found not guilty, the league will probably choose to suspend him at some point during this season. This will be his 3rd year in the league. He was the 23rd overall pick 2 years ago. Little bit of a step back, but still really good. 63 catches, 875 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He only played in 15 regular season games. He had an ankle sprain that caused him to miss a couple of games. The thing is, when you're dealing with a new quarterback, you don't know how he is going to treat everybody. Justin Jefferson's going to be fine. But is Justin Jefferson going to be like this uber target earner, like on the CeeDee Lamb level? Or is Jordan Addison still going to carve out a fairly significant role? You could see Hawkinson, and you could tell yourself a story where Hawkinson and Jefferson are the 2 main targets on this passing offense. and Addison maybe takes another step back this year. I don't know if that's likely to happen, but I certainly know it could happen. When you look at his ADP right now, Corbin, we see Jordan Addison as wide receiver 37, right smack dab in the middle of the 7th round between Olave, Odunze, and Jennings. He's right in that glut right there. Does that sound like a target for you in the mid-7th as wide receiver 37, or are you fading him because of the uncertainty on how these this passing offense will look under JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I think he's a target. It's always kind of just, a middle round target guy where he's going to give you those spike games with and without Justin Jefferson. If you just, part of it just, like Justin Jefferson just commands just such a high target share and so many targets. I think, as long as Addison can get kind of in that 20% target share range or a little higher, that's where we kind of see those boom games really. So I think it's if you're looking at a guy that's, again, I'm trusting in, and maybe it's too much faith, but I'm trusting in this offensive kind of environment, regardless if there's a change at quarterback there. So, yeah, target for me and Addison.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just drafted him in a best ball league that I was in a couple of days ago, a slow draft, and I feel pretty good about it. He's my number 4 receiver there. It's a primo pick. I'm pretty excited. Now I just got to find a way to get JJ McCarthy on that team because I also have Justin Jefferson on that team as well, so I could get the Skull mega stack there in Minnesota. Let's go to Emeka Egbuka. Speaking of players that I wish I had more shares of, this is a guy I did not hit on any of my rookie drafts, which is really unfortunate. And I've only got him on like one best ball team so far, which sucks. Rookie receiver Emeka Egbuka apparently has been the talk of Tampa Bay minicamp. Mike Evans was talking about how strong his hands are, how he looks like a running back, but he catches like Chris Godwin, that he's very polished, that he's well-rounded. And this is coming from a Hall of Famer who's his teammate on his current team. He is the all-time, Corbin, I don't know if you know this. Every time I tell somebody this, they're flabbergasted. He is the all-time leading receiver in Ohio State Buckeyes history. No Buckeyes receiver, not David Boston, McLaurin, Smith and Jigba, Olave, Marvin Harrison, any of these guys. None of them caught more passes than Egbuka. Now, part of that had to do with a college football playoff that lasted about 3.5 months this past year that Egbuka ended up going all the way to the title game. Part of that is he came back for his senior year when a lot of these other guys decided to take the leap forward. But still, when you think about all those great Ohio State receivers over the years, Egbuka stands above them all, at least statistically. Now, here's why I'm really starting to like him. Godwin is coming off this ankle injury. Evans is another year older. Evans, they had to scheme him a play at the end of the season, the very last game of the season, to make sure he gets his 1,000-yard streak keep going. Baker Mayfield was awesome last year. He was awesome when Godwin was hurt. He was awesome when Evans was hurt. He was awesome. So I love the fact that he's the quarterback there. Egbuka, to me, is a guy that makes Jalen McMillan almost meaningless for fantasy. And I said almost. But, man, the upside for Egbuka, if Evans were to go down or if Godwin's not ready for week 1, this guy's polished. He's pro-ready. I wish I had more of him. And if everybody's talking about him now, he's definitely going to ascend draft boards as we move on. Wide receiver 51 at the 10:04. This is Ayuk, Darnell Mooney, Pittman territory. For God's sake, Egbuka could not be more of a target for me here. Are you seeing it the same way as I am?
Oh yeah, he was in one of my articles of RotoBaller, just kind of a must-have for rookie receiver for me in redraft and dynasty leagues. I'll be honest, Egbuka didn't kind of pop on my spreadsheet when I'm kind of doing the data, but it's mostly because I have it more weighted towards like kind of 2024 and just across the entire career. But I think you're spot on, right? He's got multiple paths to succeed, right? So like starting the season, he might be kind of 3rd or 4th on that depth chart, but if we just look at, again, team level context, we look at the receivers that come out of Ohio State that are 1st-round picks, or just the track record of 1st-round wide receivers, it's been pretty good in recent seasons. So and then we're adding that into the layer of this offense is, pretty good and it's pretty stable. But yeah, I think there's multiple paths for Egbuka to be successful in year 1. So yeah, I think it's definitely a target.
Yeah, and for Dynasty, I mean, he probably should have gone higher in Dynasty rookie drafts as well. But we'll see what happens as far as this season goes. I'm with you. There's a lot of ways that Egbuka can be successful, even as a rookie, even behind Godwin and Evans in year one in the NFL. Now, a player that I probably drafted too much of early, we'll go to the opposite end of the spectrum here. And I wish I had less of at this point. I haven't drafted him in a while. It's Luther Burden III. He is reported to be expected to be ready for training camp. Rookie minicamp, he had an undisclosed injury. Ben Johnson is saying this. He's 21 years old, second-round pick, which has not signed his rookie deal. That's totally normal because the Browns and Texans have ruined the second round for all of us. They give guaranteed money to their two picks in the second round, and now all these second-rounders want guaranteed money, and none of them are signed yet, which is really stinky, but it is what it is. Burden is a player that was drafted early in the second round after the Bears took Loveland in the first, on a team that already had a DJ Moore and that already used top 10 overall draft capital on Rome Odunze last year. He could be the number 3 wideout this year. There's so much to talk about with him here. We know Ben Johnson talked about how important the slot position, the slot receiver position is in his offense. That's what Luther Burden would be playing with Moore and Odunze on the perimeter. But you could also make the case that Ben Johnson simply utilized the slot receiver so much in Detroit because he had Amon-Ra St. Brown as his slot receiver, right? And why wouldn't you utilize that as much as you could? Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland are still there. And Loveland, by the way, recovering from shoulder surgery, so he's missing a lot of these reps as well. I think that as I look at it now, I was very excited about the draft capital, very excited about how he fits on this offense. Then the injury has kind of soured me. Ben Johnson kind of quasi called him out for this publicly as well, which was a little weird. I don't know. I'm not getting the warm fuzzies of Luther Burden right now that I was getting in early May, Corbin. He has become a fade for me. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I hadn't initially seen some of the injury stuff that's undisclosed, but at least when I had written this article, maybe like a month or so ago, or Burden was definitely a target for me, mm-hmm. Because I just, we could poke holes in some of the short area behind the line. But when we're looking at some of the metrics that he has in terms of being able to force missed tackles as on catches and just his yards after the catch stuff, they all align with some of the athleticism measures. And again, this might just be kind of process for me, but when there's a talented player and he's one of the cheaper options in a potentially rising offense with Ben Johnson, I'm going to take the chance there. So Burden kind of fits that mold over on buying into the cheaper option. I think we've got Dunze a little further down the rundown, but I can kind of poke holes or see some paths there too. But I guess, yeah. If we even go back a year, right? Like I remember people talking about Burden, possibly coming out last year and could have been one of the better receiving prospects. So, I think I'm just buying into this dude is uber talented and, she's going to jump onto the field and, maybe there's some of that, other stuff we talk about with Ben Johnson calling him out. But I think there's going to, once they see him on the field and he makes some plays, they're going to be like, we need this guy a part of our offense. So
he has rebounded a little bit as far as his ADP goes. He's back up into the 11th round. He had dipped into like the 13th, 14th. I just see on Fantasy Mojo right now, he actually fell into the 15th round in a draft recently. But he has rebounded. Wide receiver 55. I don't know. Maybe this is a player that I'm being a little too harsh on because as I have been fading him, seemingly a lot of other people have been fading him as well, which might turn him into a target at this point. I was drafting him as my number 4 receiver. You can get him pretty easily as your number 5, maybe your number 6 receiver at this point, and that might be worth taking. Okay. The guy who is going directly ahead of Burden as far as the wide receiver position goes, any wide receiver, not just rookie wide receiver, is Trey Harris, wide receiver 54 at the 1107. He's expected to be the X receiver for the Chargers this year. Ladd McConkey and him should be complementary receivers. He's 6'2", 205, 60 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns. in just 8 games in 2024, which was really exciting to see. Mike Williams is still there. I've said this earlier in the program. I say it all the time. It's a young man's game. This is Trey Harris's position to lose. Quentin Johnston is there. I think I don't think he repeats the efficiency that he had last year. I'm very excited about Trey Harris this year, and I'm even more excited about his ADP that I can get potentially the number 2 receiver on the Chargers at the 1107. I know it is a massive run offense, and you think about the backfield, what it looked like last year with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Now you have Omari and Hampton and Najee Harris and a slightly improved offensive line. So I think that's working against Trey Harris. But again, for the cost of a mid 11th round for a guy that could be a significant player this year as a 5th wide receiver, I wouldn't say he's a target, but he's definitely not a fade for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a guy that he just every time I was doing research this offseason, he just popped on like all my filters. I mean, he obviously broke the chart in terms of kind of yards per run against man and zone coverages. That's probably contributed towards kind of how kind of Ole Miss kind of runs their offense and, Jackson Dart and things like that. But yeah, in terms of Trey Harris, he was targeted a ton from Jackson Dart, over 21% of the time. And where I see a fit, like you're saying, is like the Chargers ranked 9th in deep target rate last year, and they've been searching for a deep target to pair with Ladd McConkey. Last season, Josh Palmer had a 26% deep target rate. Quentin Johnson was at 22%, and they were kind of leading the team. So I think Harris kind of fits in here of what they need. And they've been looking for someone that's pretty explosive. And so I think this is kind of one of those guys where, yeah, I'm just kind of, I like the kind of fit here, and he doesn't eat into what McConkey does either, like you're saying. So I think this is a kind of a good pairing. And I think they could hit on, another early round receiver. So.
And it's double-digit round draft capital, right? Like you're not investing a 7th round pick or an 8th round pick into him. He's going in the 11th, damn near the 12th. So there's a lot to like with Trey Harris. Okay, Rich on YouTube, here's your favorite part. This is where we talk about the Denver receivers here. And I want to lead things off with one of the young guys, the Ute on this team, Pat Bryant, who was surprisingly drafted in the 3rd round. Okay, so 74th overall pick. He has been compared by Sean Payton to Michael Thomas, and I'm going to say compared in parentheses because he didn't really comp him to him, but he compared parts of his game to Michael Thomas's. He's 6'2", 204. I don't know if the separation is going to be there ever in his career. I guess the other aspect of this, I don't know if it matters if the separation is ever there when you're that big. He is competing with Marvin Mims. He is competing with Devon Bailey, and he's competing with Troy Franklin to be opposite Courtland Sutton on an offense that really took a step forward last year, and I think it will take another step forward this year with the additions of R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins in that backfield. Pat Bryant right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla tournament over the course of the last 3 days is going as wide receiver 64 at the 14-10. No such thing as a bad pick after the 10th round. At least that's what I subscribe to. Baker Boy, Joe Delzanero, longtime FFPC player. He's always said that, and I've always believed that as well. So you can't go wrong in the 14th round. I think he is kind of a target because like Rich was pointing out earlier, it's such a nebulous situation with the Broncos receivers there. I do think the second one could have value. And I know Devon Bailey, and I had him on the rundown initially, Corbin. I had to take him off because I knew we wouldn't get to him. But he's been having a very good mini camp as well. I'm leaning towards Bryant over Bailey, but I could see Bailey as well. I think there's something there here with Bryant, and it's more of a FOMO pick for me. Like, I don't want to be one of these guys who always thought about taking Bryant but never did, and then he has this outstanding rookie season. So I think that's what it more comes down to. Pat Bryant has put the fear into me. I don't want to be a wish I had with Pat Bryant.
Yeah, Pat Bryant was a guy that, the spreadsheet that I have for rookies just loved. Just another guy that kind of pops in. Not all these receivers hit, but another guy that pops to kind of just 2.5 yards per route run against man and zone coverages last year. And where I also kind of noticed kind of Bryant kind of just standing out is he was one of the 2 of the rookies who had 15 yards per route run when targeted deep, 10 yards per route run when targeted kind of in the middle areas of the field, and then 10 yards per route run on short area targets. So again, it's just a guy that I think can kind of play all over the field. It can be target all over the field. I think the tricky part when we're looking at just the Broncos, just kind of team level, how they've used kind of their receivers is, at least last year, besides Cortland Sutton, they were kind of rotating in a lot of guys, right? They were rotating in Devon Vele, Marvin Mims later, which I got a fun stat on that we can talk about later.
Yep.
And mixing in just a bunch of these guys. So I think it's because they probably still like Vele. Maybe Pat Bryant eats in a little more, but if they're going to rotate all these other guys in, that I don't think we're going to get kind of that consistent usage when we're talking about Pat Bryant. I mean, again, the data says he's going to be pretty darn good, but I think unless we see kind of more consistent kind of usage with some of their second or third wide receivers, then it's hard for me to have like full confidence in Bryant. But the college profile just stands out to me of a guy that we kind of want a piece of for sure.
Yeah, it's maddening because Vele's been really good. Vele was good in spurts last year, and now we're hearing a lot of good stuff out of minicamp about him this year. Troy Franklin was he a day 2 pick? If he wasn't day 2, he was pretty close to day 2. So you have him there as well. Like Pat Bryant could do everything right and put up all these numbers, and he could still just not get on the field, which would be like, Sean Payton doing his best impression of Arthur Smith, which would be awful for fantasy. I feel like I buried the lead. We started off with receivers for target or fade. I want to go to running backs for target or fade. And I think these are the more fun ones to talk about, Corbin. Let's go to Bucky Irving right now. Running back 8 at the 210. A guy that I missed out on like I didn't have Bucky Irving on any dynasty or any redraft league last year, which is really unfortunate. Bucky Irving is the guy that pushed me over the top, Corbin. That I'm no longer a sizeist at running back. Devon Achane got me to the mountaintop, and now Bucky Irving has just sent me screaming downhill on the other side. I don't really worry about size anymore when it comes to these guys. Maybe I should, but certainly these guys have proven that you can be small and still be an effective top 5, top 10 running back in the NFL. Bucky Irving was great last year. The great thing about him was he was a league winner where you could draft him. This year, not so fast, my friend. 210 is where he's going as running back 8. He is going ahead of Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, and Chase Brown. Is he a target for you at the 210, or is he a fade? I'm really worried about drafting him, what I perceive to be his near his ceiling right now.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got to talk about kind of the journey of Bucky Irving, right? So, Rachaad White's leading the backfield for weeks 1 through 10, in terms of snap share and target share. They're about even in rush attempts. And then from week 12 on, Irving is still kind of sharing some of the snaps with Rachaad White relatively evenly. The only thing that flips is more of the rush attempts and the targets a tiny bit. So, but what that tells me is they're going to want 2 running backs in this backfield there, right? So that kind of automatically kind of limits the kind of ceiling scenario there for Bucky Irving. I mean, even like I was trying to look at like just some of the advanced kind of rushing metrics. They're all pretty much the same. I mean, we could argue that Rachaad White was even a tiny bit better in weeks 12 through 18 in terms of the advanced rushing data. But Irving is just like you're saying, size aside, this dude breaks and forces tackles like no one's business, and it's fun to watch. I think again, this probably goes on how you're going to build your team, right? If you're okay with understanding that this early round running back is going to be sharing with another back, then that's fine, right? And just understanding that there's some other paths, and it's probably going to take. I mean, even if Rachaad White were to go down, I think there'd probably be another running back eating in, and maybe Bucky Irving gets a little more 2/3 of that instead of 50-50. But so I think I hate having to use like a Rashad White or not, sorry, like a DeAndre Swift type thing, but that guy keeps popping in my head of like, he's always sharing the backfield with someone for the most part. And so if you're fine with that, then that's fine. But I think we're going to really need that receiving profile to be there. And so I mean, maybe things change because there's like, without Liam Cohen or whatever, but I feel like it's a slight fade just kind of based on who's going around. I hate to kind of do that, but we kind of did that earlier, just kind of who's going around, kind of Bucky Irving. I just feel like I'd rather kind of wait and, maybe I take a stab at this backfield with Rashad White a little later or something like that.
The thing's working against Irving. Obviously, I said like this guy has skyrocketed up ADP. So now the cost for him is very significant this year. The other thing too, Liam Cohen has moved on, and now they got Kevin Grizzard. I want to say Grizzard, something like that. Is the OC there? We don't exactly know what's going to happen to that Buccaneers offense. I mean, maybe he'll have a different interpretation of it. And those questions alone for me, I think has me off of Bucky Irving at that price because I'd find better uses of my draft pick, my end of the second round draft pick there. That said, I will try to get Bucky Irving on at least one of my teams this year, just to see what happens. Like if he blows up again and performs well, then at least I have him on one of my teams. I do want some exposure to Irving, just probably not a ton. And I'm with you. I'm more likely to take somebody else there rather than him. Now you have to take a stand on this next guy. It's target or fade, Tyrone Tracy. And if you are targeting Tyrone Tracy as running back 38 at the 909, you're probably fading Cam Scatterboot as running back 32 at the 807. So about a round's worth of difference between those guys right there. And maybe a little bit more, maybe more like a round and a half there. Are you targeting or fading? And let's just throw Scatterboot in here as well. Targeting or fading Scatterboot or Tracy? How are you breaking down this Giants? It's like the third time we've talked about the Giants. This is why this podcast will never be huge, because we've spent 3 different portions of the show tonight talking about one of the worst offenses in the NFL. But let's talk about Scatterboot versus Tracy here. I've been asking a lot of people about this, Corbin. How do you fall in on it?
Tyrone Tracy was a fade for me even before the NFL draft. Again, when we look at guys like this, so I do a series on RotoViz where I contribute to part of it, where every year we kind of look at some rookies and how they're kind of looking at year 2 and beyond, and we kind of look at the comparables. Speaking of Rashad White, Tyrone Tracy's top comparison was Rashad White. So, I mean, Rashad White did kind of shove it in our face in year 2, and he was pretty decent. But I could argue that White wasn't slightly more talented and more proven than Tyrone Tracy is. So, I mean, if you look at Cam Scatterboot, and it's hard to not kind of get some of those late season or even college football playoff kind of visuals in my head with Scatterboot, where this dude is like, he looks like he's injured or he's bleeding, and he is just grinding out and doing anything he possibly can to keep the steam of the game. And I feel like that's something we're going to see at kind of the NFL. So and Cam Scatterboot can catch passes, right? So I think if we're looking at the path there, it's like, I'm into Scatterboot. I'm definitely fading Tracy, just kind of based on some of the research of how, running backs that fit that kind of profile and the success that they have. It's typically not they don't kind of take a step forward in year 2 is what I'm getting at. So
I think the fact that I don't know what Cam Scatterboot is going to be at the NFL level, I just normally if a player is like that, I'm not investing. But that's if he's a high draft pick. Cam Scatterboot is an 8th round pick right now. If I miss on Scatterboot, no harm, no foul. I had 7 picks before that. Hopefully I hit on the majority of those and it won't hurt me. The other thing that I think is important to bring up, and I don't know if I brought this up before, but I wonder if people are double counting Cam Scatterboot's metrics or lack thereof against him, because we know, like, this dude is a football player. He's a football player. Is he the fastest guy? Absolutely not. Is he the strongest guy? Probably not. But when you get him on a football field, it just seems like he makes plays and he gets it done. And if we are double counting and penalizing him because of his poor combine, then he is a value in the 8th round. I know what we have in Tyrone Tracy. Don't know what we have in Cam Scadaboo. I'd be more likely to target Scadaboo and fade Tracy. Last one I want to bring up here. We'll talk about the Broncos again. How do you feel about the signing of J.K. Dobbins? We're going to talk about R.J. Harvey. Obviously has to be a part of this discussion as well. But when the Broncos added J.K. Dobbins, there's a lot of people that reacted to it, and there was a lot of people that overreacted to it as well, saying that Harvey was going to be this big bust now, and you can't draft him at all. His value's cratered. And it's J.K. Dobbins. Like, it's not like they went out and got Walter Payton. I mean, this is a guy that was on the free agent market for forever. Forever he was out there. Anybody could have gotten him. And it took till June for him to sign. RJ Harvey has fallen a little bit. He's come back up within the last week or so. Running back 18, Corbin, at the 503 right now. J.K. Dobbins has entered the picture at running back 44 at the 1104. Are either of those guys targets or fades for you based on them sharing the same backfield? And ostensibly, we don't know for sure, being the number 1 and number 2 running backs in that offense.
Yeah. Earlier we talked about kind of refreshing my football brain. Yeah. Digging into Dobbins and signing definitely did that for me. Right. I mean, he was pretty good, with the Chargers last year. Some pretty decent kind of advanced metrics, 21% evasion rate, for context, probably an evasion rate about 20% or higher is pretty damn good, especially for a rusher like Dobbins who had multiple kind of lower body injuries. So if you liked Javonte Williams without the receiving profile, I think that's what J.K. Dobbins is. So,
okay. Yeah.
I mean, some inefficiencies probably. The tricky part, and I researched this like a year or two ago, is, under Sean Payne, the kind of rushing or just a running back expected fantasy points are really good, but where they come from is usually 2 to 3 running backs. Right. So combined, it's great, but it usually comes from at least 2, maybe 3. And we kind of saw that a little bit last year. So I think we want a piece of this backfield. I think it's good for Harvey's price to kind of go down a little bit. I mean, Harvey's profile, it's hard to poke holes in it, right? Like, he's another guy that just pops in all the metrics and all the production and underlying stuff. So I think it's easy to see why people are excited about it. So I think we want to buy the dip on Harvey and maybe take a shot at kind of Dobbins, especially because it's going to be so cheap. And then just kind of thinking of Dobbins as maybe like an early season guy that you're ready to kind of, ditch out or switch out for somebody else. Right. So I think we're going to want a piece of both, but maybe not over investing on one way or the other.
And the other thing to keep in mind too, if either one of them were to go down, now all of a sudden you're looking at like a top 15 running back for the times that for those weeks that the other guy misses, which is something to keep in mind. I think sometimes we just fade backfields because we say, oh, it's an RBBC or it's a 2-headed monster there. Well, people get hurt in the NFL, especially running backs, and you don't need a guy to be out for the season. Sometimes if a guy just misses 2 or 3 weeks, that could be the difference in either making the playoffs, winning your league, or maybe winning $1 million, like you can do with the FFPC Big Gorilla drafts going on tonight. Fun fact, I'll be commissioning the 10 p.m. Eastern time draft tonight, as well as the midnight draft. So you want to hop in and draft RJ Harvey or J.K. Dobbins or fade both of them. You can do that. MyFFPC.com, $1 million grand prize for the Big Gorilla this year. The 7 Bananas promo is live. Keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row, and we'll keep giving you free teams. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. I want to take our final break. When we come back, I want to talk about with Corbin Young from RotoBaller and RotoViz, where he stands on the Seahawks running backs, where he stands on Jalen Warren, where he stands on Stephon Diggs, and we're going to get that tasty little Marvin Mims stat to be the dessert on this show. I'm Eric Balkman. He's Corbin Young. You're watching FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I'm here to talk to you guys about how to take advantage of your takes. I got them. You got them. We've all been thinking about ways to go with this rookie class, maybe even ways to get away from the rookie class, to go with the older veterans, to take advantage. Dynasty startup leagues at FFPC.com. MyFFPC, that's the place to play. That's where you can go in and you can load up on the rookies from this class. If you love Ashton Genty, if you love a Marion Hampton, if you're fired up about Pat Bryant, whoever it is. You can go in and get all these guys now and have them for their entire careers. Now is the time to get in and do it. Or if you don't like these rookies, if you think it was stupid that the Bears took Colston Loveland, if you think Emeka Egbuka is going to be buried behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for years and years, flip it. Go in and draft veterans. Go in and draft guys now while everybody else is going for picks and players and prospects. Load up, put your name on the trophy and the money in your pocket right now. And the best place to do it, where I do it, where all the experts do it, FFPC, myffpc.com. And when you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. So get in there now and do a dynasty startup draft. Draft your team. Show everyone that you would have dominated the real NFL draft, that you're the real best GM, and win some money over at myffpc.com now.
Thank you, Andrew Cooper, for that. Yeah, myffpc.com, a lovely place to go to play fantasy football, including but not limited to the FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments. The Best Ball tournament features a $300,000 grand prize at just a $125 entry and a $100,000 grand prize for the runner-up in that competition. $35 will enter you into the Superflex Best Ball tournament, $100K for the grand prize there. Spend $35, make $100,000. Where else can you do that? Drafts available 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, 6-hour clocks right now at myffpc.com. We're joined tonight by the FSWA Baseball Writer of the Year, Corbin Young. And we have found out through an hour and 46 minutes, Corbin Young knows a few things about fantasy football too. And he's definitely dispensing his expertise on tonight. What a treat it's been for us. You can normally check him out at rotoviz.com and of course, rotoballer.com. Let's find out where you stand on some of these players. And I'll bring up the Seahawks running backs first, Corbin. You have Kenneth Walker right now with an ADP of 409 in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. If we go down a little bit further, we will see Zach Charbonnet at the 906 as running back 34. I am Team Walker this year, but if I miss out on Walker, because I like grabbing other people's handcuffs, if I miss out on Walker, I like to gobble up Charbonnet in a few spots too. Long story short, I like both of these guys, just not on the same team. I got to separate them.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for Walker because he's just one of those tackle breaking machines. And, another thing with Walker is like, besides some of the injuries last year, he saw a career high in targets. So he had the 8th best expected fantasy points per game, right? So there was some kind of positive trends there. I know there's a ton of different changes, quarterback and all these other things. So that could impact some of their, how they kind of run their offense. I feel like it's probably trending more. They're going to kind of want to lean on the run a little bit, just kind of based on the moves they made. But yeah, the way that the Seahawks tend to kind of, at least recently, is kind of deploy their running backs is they seem to kind of mostly, have it with one running back. So I think that's where Charbonnet is kind of, definitely a player to prioritize later because whenever Walker's missed time, Charbonnet eats up all that work, right? More rush attempts, more targets, more overall production. And the kind of accessory guys that they have with like Kenny McIntosh or these other guys, like they're not really chipping in as much as other teams do, right? They're kind of consolidated. So I think, you're going to want to prioritize both and then, take a shot at Charbonnet for sure because of how this offense typically consolidates things in their lead back.
Charbonnet was awesome last year when Walker went down. And I remember this too, when we were covering the 2023 NFL draft? I want to say, 2023 NFL draft live on the Better Sports Network. And we were watching the picks come in. And I was hosting, and everybody just like went. It was just the eye-popping moment when we saw the Seahawks draft Charbonnet in the second round after they had just taken Kenneth Walker the previous year. Charbonnet, it's important to remember this dude, if he would have gone to a quote-unquote normal landing spot, would be much higher up draft boards right now. He is a bona fide 3-down guy. He's just behind Kenneth Walker right now. So I'm with you on both of these guys for Walker and Charbonnet this year, despite the change in offensive coordinator, which I think is something to be monitoring throughout training camp. Chuba Hubbard is a player that I have been selecting more than a few times over the last month as my number 2 running back 21 at the 504 right now. Where do you stand on Chuba Hubbard this year, knowing Jonathan Brooks cannot play this year? Rico Dowdle did not get buku bucks, and they did not invest huge draft capital into getting Trevor Etienne. This is a leading question, Corbin. I am standing on Chuba Hubbard right now. I love him. I think he's going to be really good this year. I like the offense taking a step forward too, as we saw in December last year with Bryce Young. Where do you stand on him?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we get a running back like Chuba Hubbard, where he's like 6th in expected fantasy points per game, and he's being drafted as like an RB2, this is your kind of cheaper Kyren Williams pick here, right? Without kind of the name value. Maybe it's a lack of competition when they had Miles Sanders. But yeah, Rico Dowdle or Trevor Etienne doesn't really move the needle for me. Sure, it could be one of those kind of dead zone backs where there's a volume, but I think the price is a little lower. And yeah, I think Hubbard's kind of a lock for like an RB2, or and it's just, there should be some good volume there, and there should be, a kind of better offensive environment next season.
Jalen Warren was a player I drafted in a slow draft yesterday. Very excited about what he can do for the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers loves throwing to his running backs, and I feel like Jalen Warren is the much more trusted and experienced pass catcher, obviously experienced, over Caleb Johnson this year. Where do you stand on Jalen Warren, who is being drafted at the 806 as running back 31 right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, Corbin?
Yeah, Warren's a guy that I think there's going to be another running back, right? So maybe it's Caleb Johnson kind of mixing in there. I feel like Warren feels kind of like Tyjae Spears of last year, where we're hoping for this breakout season. Hopefully they don't bring in anybody too big or too massive. But I'm not sure if Caleb Johnson's kind of on that Pollard level, but we're always going to want to buy into a running back that's kind of priced in the middle rounds with a receiving profile like Warren, who's got a 12 to 15% target share. That's in your kind of elite range, right? So I think it just needs to be a small nudge, right? But Warren has a 25% rush share. And so if we can just get him to 40% of the rush attempts, then we've got a player that's like a discounted version of Devon Achane or Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not saying he's going to be in that same level. I'm just saying in terms of the profile of rush attempts and target share, the kind of the 40% rush share for Warren would be kind of the threshold where we've got something kind of more relevant if we can get that elite target share in that profile for sure. So yeah, I'm with you. It's I think it's a buy there.
We are agreeing way too much tonight, but that's okay because great minds think alike. Well, at least you have a great mind. I just happen to be piggybacking onto you tonight. Jordan Mason has once again, I think we talked about this last week on the show. Jordan Mason has tightened the lead that Aaron Jones has over him in ADP right now. If we look at the Big Gorilla ADP, 608 for Aaron Jones as running back 25. Jordan Mason, running back 33 at the 903. So you're looking at about 2.5 rounds difference. Again, I just think that this is shaping up to be 1A and 1B in this Minnesota backfield this year. And I think they're going to need to. They want to take pressure off McCarthy. They're going to utilize both these backs as evidenced by giving up draft capital for Mason and then signing him to that contract extension. As of right now, I'm still where do I stand on Jordan Mason? I still like him. But if he keeps going up, Aaron Jones becomes the buy. Right now, Jordan Mason is the buy for me. But man, if it keeps getting tight like this, at some point, I'm going to start liking Jones. This Minnesota backfield, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, so let's review a tiny bit. So Jordan Mason is right. He's kind of 18th in expected fantasy points per game in weeks 1 through 7. The only other running backs within the top 20 in expected fantasy points per game during weeks 1 through 7 that had kind of lower receiving expected points. So it means they barely had any receiving part of their profile. Yeah. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. I don't think Jordan Mason is any of those guys. And we've seen a lot of those guys, kind of garner more volume for more time than Jordan Mason has. I think he's okay, but I guess my process would be, I'm fine with fading Jordan Mason, who's kind of this middle round running back who hasn't really shown us a receiving profile in the past. So I'm fine fading Jordan Mason if that hurts me there. So
yeah, no, I get it. And finally, we are on the opposite end of something, which is good. Means we're both independent thinkers. Let's get into Rome Odunze. We teased this earlier that we were going to talk about him. The 9th overall pick of the draft last year, he is sharing a wide receiver room with Luther Burden and DJ Moore, amongst others. And also the pass catchers on this team that are not receivers, like DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland. There are a lot of players that Caleb Williams can throw to, and yet FFPC players are drafting him as wide receiver 36, Odunze going at the 702. Where do you stand on Odunze currently, Corbin?
Well, if I'm into Luther Burden, then I'm probably fading Rome Odunze at the price. Living up here in the Pacific Northwest, Odunze has been so fun to watch, right? He made a ton of contested catches. They had wonderful season, him and Michael Penix. But I think the argument in favor of Odunze would be the Bears offense takes a step forward under Ben Johnson, which we're all hoping for, assuming. And Caleb Williams actually giving Rome Odunze catchable targets. So maybe that's just some play calling or some weird thing last year. But Rome Odunze had a kind of team low 66% catchable target rate. DJ Moore, 81%, Keenan Allen, 74%. So the targets that Caleb Williams was throwing to Rome Odunze was, significantly worse or uncatchable than his other teammates. So I think if your argument for Odunze would be like, hey, there's no Keenan Allen. Hey, there's going to be a bounce back, better play calling, probably better catchable targets, right? If we see that data, the team sees that data. But I think the argument against Rome Odunze is kind of where I'm at is, what if Burden earns more reps and becomes more of a primary target earner besides DJ Moore? I think there's a path for Colston Loveland to earn more targets and potentially taking away from Rome Odunze. I think it's good to lean into some uncertainty, but again, when we're looking at guys like Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, even Jordan Addison, who we talked about that, I'm kind of high on, and Jalen Waddle, it's like, I don't know. I can't see the path for Rome Odunze there, but I'm ready to be wrong. So,
well, and we got to keep in mind, and that's what I always come back to. Ben Johnson, despite hyping up Rome Odunze publicly to the press, he has no allegiance to him. He was not part of this team when they drafted him last year. Ben Johnson was part of this team when they utilized their first 2 draft picks on a tight end and a wide receiver. It does not give me the warm fuzzies about Odunze. Stephon Diggs, this is a player that I was ready to not draft at all. And then he basically steps off a boat with scantily clad women, walks right into minicamp and is crushing it. He's cutting. Forget the running. He's cutting. He just tore his ACL, what seemed about like 2.5 weeks ago, and he's already cutting on it. Wide receiver 42 at the 807. I got to start taking a long, hard look at Diggs because there is a wide open possibility for him to be the number 1 receiver for Drake May and the Patriots this year.
Yeah. No, you kind of made me dig in here, right? So Diggs has been a lead target earner for several seasons, even before suffering the torn ACL. He was second on the team before the injury in weighted targets per run behind Nico Collins. He was producing. He was still pretty decent at, average separation score, kind of slightly behind CeeDee Lamb, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas, things like that. I think there's still some juice in there. I think I probably think, I don't know if he's at the same level of like, Devontae Adams, but I think he's a little closer to Devontae Adams and kind of DeAndre Hopkins in terms of the career arc. I guess, does that make sense? I think there's at least a year or so left. The Patriots need some offensive help, and I can't see anybody that's going to be stealing targets away from him if, assuming another step forward from Drake May. The rest of the receiving room is pretty awful, so I imagine we're going to get like 150 targets, assuming he's healthy.
Yeah, well, people have been hyping up Kyle Williams. Demario Douglas has gotten some hype too, but let's face it, it's Stephon Diggs. If this dude's healthy, and if May is going to take that step forward, it's Diggs. We have had a fantastic ice cream sundae of a show. Plenty of vanilla ice cream, plenty of whipped cream, hot fudge. We need that cherry on the top, Corbin. So end tonight's show with the Marvin Mims stat that you were teasing earlier.
All right. So, any just season-long metric we look at, we're like, oh, Marvin Mims, awesome. He's popping here, right? High target rate, high yards per run. But I think this came up in some research, and then I redug it up again just tonight. So when Marvin Mims was targeted, and it was not a screen pass, 17 targets per run, 6.3% first read target share, 1.97 yards per route run.
When it wasn't a screen, when it
was not a screen pass.
Screen. Okay.
All right. So here's the wild part of when Marvin Mims was targeted on a screen pass, 75% targets per route run, 29.3% first read target share, 6.5 yards per route run. So, I mean, I'd have to do more research on, how if a receiver can thrive on efficiency as a screen.
Well,
here, but
Luther Burden did it for years in Missouri. We'll see if he does it in Chicago. That is insane to be at a professional level and having Marvin Mims have stats like that. That's crazy. That's
so
crazy.
I mean, I think we've heard some rumblings, right? Of Sean Payton loving, Marvin Mims. And so if some of the usage kind of evolves and we get, more consistent target rate, more consistent first read target share, I could see us kind of thinking of like, maybe this is like and again, I hate to throw these kind of comps because I know about, but this could feel like a cheaper, I know they're different in profile too, but like a cheaper kind of version of a Jameson Williams like earlier on, right? Where it's just like he just needs 5 targets and 3 of them could be for 75 yards, right? So I mean, I don't know how sustainable screen targets are, but I mean, man, they pretty much put Marvin Mims in this optimal situation where and when it was a screen pass, they were targeting him at a pretty high rate. So
Corbin, for a guy who is so deep into baseball right now, I learned so much talking football with you tonight. I know if anybody follows you at Corbin_Young21 on X, they're going to get a lot of baseball stuff. But if we check out your work on RotoViz and RotoBaller, we will see a lot of significant football articles that you've already written this year. When do you sort of make the switch over to football? When are we going to see some more football content from you?
Usually it's right about now, definitely in July for sure. Just some other, this year's been a little bit different. I've been doing a little more coaching and some other things outside of sports stuff. So that's kind of eating into my kind of weekly bandwidth. So, but I'm trying to, but yeah, baseball is definitely kind of, but it'll eventually shift a little more evenly as we get in the heat of the summer here.
We will be following you and all your work at RotoViz and RotoBaller, of course. Corbin, this was so much fun, man. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We'll definitely have to have you back on again sometime for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad we could work this out, Eric.
Absolutely. I'll play the FFPC main event, the FFPC Big Gorilla, the Dynasty Startups, and of course, both FFPC best ball tournaments, the Classic and the Superflex over at myffpc.com. We'll be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. Player profiler, contributor, and Stack Hunters co-host Dan Williamson will rejoin the show. Looking forward to that as well. For our producer, Matt Deutsch, for Corbin Young, I'm Eric Balkman. You have watched FFPC Insider Access on Fantasy Football Night in America on the Better Sports Network. Talk with you next week.